lions hear the bullet hissed, but my man just yelled back, motherfucker, you missed.
Have you guys ever heard the phrase, they just don't make them like they used to? Now, this can be applied to just about anything. Films, books, series, machines, even houses, etc., etc. But what about when it comes to villains? Now, being a child of the 80s and 90s myself, I may be a little bit biased, but it's in my opinion that those 2 decades produced some of the greatest fictional villains of all time. Now, I just did a top 10 villainous organizations, which were my favorites, but here we're going to be focused on the individual. Because whoever said that 2 heads were better than 1 anyway?
The power of
Hey! Get out of here! The less we talk about that, the better. Anyway, without further ado, here's my top 10 list of my favorite villains of the 80s and 90s, part 1. Enjoy. Number 10 on the list may strike some as a little odd, but hear me out as I have my own reasons for liking this particular character. Now, in the mid-80s, Filmation launched their successful Masters of the Universe toy line, followed up by the animated series of the same name. Now, in the franchise, we are introduced to He-Man, main hero of the planet of Eternia and wielder of the Sword of Grayskull. He-Man's main adversary is the villain Skeletor, presented in the series as a powerful but bumbling skull-faced sorcerer. Now, I myself was never a huge He-Man fan, and even less for the character of Skeletor, who, even as a kid, I saw the villain as nothing more than an inept buffoon. Sometime later, Filmation launched the literal sister series to Masters of the Universe, namely She-Ra, Princess of Power. This character was meant to be the twin sister of Prince Adam and defender of the planet of Etheria, ruled over by its own maniacal dictator. Now, as much disinterest as I might have had for He-Man, I had even less enthusiasm for its spin-off that obviously aimed towards little girls. But She-Ra surprised me in more ways than one. Now, this may be a bit controversial, but I find She-Ra, Princess of Power, to be a superior forebearer to He-Man. Its characters, storylines, dynamics, and even execution all far surpassed its predecessor in my opinion. Now, this comes into even sharper focus when it comes to the show's main villain, Hordak. In comparison to Skeletor, Hordak isn't given that much of a fleshed out backstory. He is the ruler of the powerful galactic army of the Horde, and is a demonic sorcerer much like Skeletor, but to a far more proficient degree. Now, this being a kid show of the 80s, much of his more villainous candor is toned down, but even so, I found Hordak to be a far more interesting and threatening villain as compared to Skeletor. Now, he certainly had his bumbling moments, but to a far lesser degree. Now, in contrast, She-Ra is shown to be less powerful than her twin brother, yet is pitted against a far more diabolical villain in Hordak. Now, if it had ended there, Hordak would be a solid and cemented villain in my mind, but his character is expanded upon in the many subsequent comic series. Now, the most memorable being that of a villain showdown between Skeletor and Hordak. It is revealed that Hordak was once the mentor of Skeletor, and thus his master and better in the mystic arts. Skeletor foolishly challenges his master and is on the brink of being destroyed by Hordak, only to be saved by He-Man at the very last minute. This mentor-pupil dynamic is further expanded upon in the 2002 rendition of Masters of the Universe by Cartoon Network. In this continuity, Skeletor, birth name of Keldor, is grievously wounded as a result of his failed takeover of Eternia. His life is saved by Hordak, who demands that Keldor serve him unconditionally as payment for sparing his life. It is said by the showrunners that Hordak would have taken over as the main antagonist had the show been renewed for future seasons. But as it stands, Hordak made an indelible impression on me as a child, and that's the reason he takes the number 10 spot on this list.
We invade Eternia! Now!
Number 9 on the list sees us taking a decidedly much darker turn. Now, while Hordak was a moderately threatening supervillain in a children's science fiction show, this entry saddles us with a sadomasochistic demon who believes in a nihilistic philosophy of the fusion of pain and pleasure. Beginning as one Captain Elliot Spencer serving in the British Armed Forces during the First World War, Spencer's experiences during the war left him a bitter and disillusioned man, which caused him to adopt a philosophy of hedonism and debauchery. On one of his many exploits, he encounters something known as the Lament Configuration, an odd-looking puzzle box that promises the granting of forbidden knowledge, if properly solved. Spencer successfully solves the box, and as a reward, he is transformed into a Cenobite, a supernatural being of terrifying power that are subservient to Leviathan, an unknown god of chaos that rules over the Hell Dimension. Throughout the Hellraiser franchise, Pinhead switches motivations, gains and loses powers, and goes through a number of character incarnations and overhauls. However, throughout all of this, he remains a supremely confident and diabolical mastermind whose only real goal is to cause misery in order to swell his own ranks. In a number of the films, he clearly states that his only motivation is to serve chaos and discord. Pinhead is of the mind that existence in its rawest form is utterly meaningless, and the pursuit of dark pleasures is the only reason for anyone, demon or mortal, to even keep on living. He is nihilism taken to its most extreme. In the character of Pinhead, we find a creature who refuses to acknowledge the tenets of both good or evil. Now in his mind, there is no good, there is no evil. There is only chaos.
We'll tear your soul apart.
Number 8 takes yet another sharp departure. Now, as is plainly evident, villains come in all shapes, sizes, and colors. We go from a far-off planet to the deepest pits of hell, and now to the darkest depths of conspiracy and government corruption. The seminal television show known as The X-Files first premiered on September 10, 1993. It tells the story of wayward FBI agent Fox Mulder and his skeptical partner Dana Scully. Over the course of 11 years, they are thrust into a conspiratorial nightmare involving the hidden existence of alien life, political intrigue, and quite literally the end of all human civilization. At the heart of the conspiracy is the Syndicate, a shadowy hidden cabal of government power brokers who have set in motion a series of events intended to bring about Armageddon, in which only a select few human elites will survive to carry on the legacy of mankind. One of the top-ranking members of the Syndicate, a man who goes by the name of Carl Bush and C.B. Spender, but is more commonly referred to as the cigarette-smoking man, develops a special interest in agents Mulder and Scully. Now, it is revealed throughout the series that the CSM was a government agent of unknown origin who gradually climbed his way through the shadowy underworld of American politics to gain a position of enormous power, acting as a behind-the-scenes puppet master. He himself being the confirmed assassin of both John F. Kennedy and Martin Luther King. CSM was only a handful of top-ranking humans to make first contact with a powerful alien species referred to in the show as the colonists. As part of a mutual pact of good faith between the Syndicate and the colonists, CSM, as well as other Kabbalists, were forced to give up members of their own family to the aliens for experimentation and testing. Now, in return, the Syndicate received exclusive communication rights with the colonists, as well as samplings of their wondrous technology that the Syndicate would slowly leak out into the industrialized markets of the world. Over time, the Syndicate became aware of the colonists' true plan for humanity, namely to infect the population with a malignant pathogen known as the Black Oil, in order to create a new slave race that would serve the colonists. Knowing that they couldn't outright challenge the aliens, the Syndicate began the development of a secret vaccine that would spare a select number of the population and ensure the continuity of the human race, with themselves as the heads of a new underground civilization. Throughout the series, CSM would serve as the primary nemesis for our two heroes, thwarting them at almost every turn. However, his special interest in Mulder is revealed to be the result of him being Mulder's biological father, as he was having a years-long affair with Mulder's mother. This character is the epitome of the shadowy mastermind. His motivations are extremely selfish, but paradoxically not entirely self-serving. CSM operates under the notion that he is actually trying to save the human race from the imminent threat of the alien virus, and he will do anything as long as it serves the auspices of what he believes is the greater good. Ironically, the cigarette-smoking man believes that he is a patriot for mankind and one of its sole defenders. He thinks his monstrous crimes can be excused simply because he has a just cause. He is a complex villain who is supremely intelligent and methodically cunning. CSM poses a moral quandary for us all. Perhaps humanity's salvation lies not with a hero, but with a villain who dares to tread where no hero will go. Now, if the cigarette-smoking man had one message for his fellow man, it would probably be, the ends do justify the means.
If people were to know of the things that I know, it would all fall apart.
Now, a lot of you might be scratching your heads and asking yourselves, wait, didn't he just say that Skeletor was a buffoon? Well, yes, I did. But here's the caveat. The animated Skeletor was an incompetent buffoon. However, the live-action adaptation of Masters of the Universe, well, that's quite a different story. So in 1987, He-Man was brought to the big screen. Now, mostly to negative reviews. Now, I may be in the vast minority here, but I've always liked the He-Man movie. What are you going to do? Fight me. Now, does it take radical departure from the source material? Yes. Does it have hammy acting, cheesy dialogue, and over-the-top melodrama? Absolutely. See, but with me, the movie carries an unquantifiable amount of charm that keeps me coming back time and again. Now, most notably, it's in the portrayal of Skeletor, played by the great Frank Langella. In the movie, Skeletor is everything that his animated counterpart is not. He is a power-mad megalomaniac, but in the film, he actually has a lot of gravitas to him. Skeletor is actually a threatening villain here. He is cunning, self-assured, and carries himself like the narcissistic god he wholeheartedly thinks that he is. Now, this is especially evident when he transforms into his golden armor god form. Now look, you cannot look at this and honestly tell me that this design isn't whole hosts of kick-ass. Now say what you will, but movie Skeletor is everything that I always wanted the character to be.
I am more than man, more than life.
So if you were at all conscious during the whole of the 80s, you simply couldn't get away from the Beastmaster. This thing was literally everywhere on TV. In fact, it aired most often on TBS, fittingly nicknamed the Beastmaster station for how much the damn network would play the movie. Now, the film has always been a staple of 80s sword and sorcery, and has long been one of my absolute favorite films growing up. The movie tells the story of Dar, an ancient warrior that roams a far-off land swarming with monsters, magic, and evil deities, very similar to Conan. Dar was the second-born son of King Zed, but was stolen at birth by the conniving and evil high priest known as Mayax. Before infant Dar could be killed in an occult ceremony, he is given the accursed Mark of Ar. Baby Dar is saved at the last moment by a local villager and is raised as a farmhand near the village of Emor. Due to the accursed mark being scald into his hand at birth, Dar has the supernatural ability of telepathically communicating with all animals. In the 20 or so years since Dar was rescued, Mayax has assumed total control of the Kingdom of Arak and has forced everyone to submit to his child's sacrificial cult. Now, when Mayax learns that Dar is alive, he pulls out all the stops to thwart his attempts at reclaiming his birthright of king. The villain of Mayax always stood out to me as the archetype of the evil, power-hungry high priest, mostly of how he is portrayed by veteran actor Rip Torn. Now, Torn brings a psychotic and wild-eyed demeanor to the character that just can't be overstated. Mayax brings an air of creepy uneasiness that I always found entertainingly unsettling. To me, Mayax represents the villainous outsider who seeks to remake society in his very own image.
Ar is not yet satisfied.